The United States has responded to Russian threats, and for the first time since the Cold War, they have promised to deploy medium-range missiles on German territory. This is one of the most significant decisions that came as a result of the NATO summit in Washington. Specifically, the weapons in question are the Tomahawk cruise, SM-6, and potentially even hypersonic missiles that would be deployed in 2026. Most importantly, these rockets have a much larger range in comparison to the weapons Berlin currently possesses. Such a missile could even reach as far as Moscow. Russian channels are already nervously counting the kilometers and once again scaring their viewers with the possibility of a nuclear war.
В радиусе поражения оказывается вся центральная часть России, в том числе под прицелом Москва. Ну, то есть Вашингтон повышает ставки.
Olga Skabeyeva is not being entirely honest regarding the nuclear threat. It was announced in a joint statement by Germany and the US that while these missiles could, in theory, be loaded with nuclear warheads, in Germany they will be deployed in their conventional, non-nuclear variant. Moreover, the West highlighted that this decision came as a response to an escalation caused by the Kremlin. Plans to deploy such weaponry in Europe have been discussed since 2021, prior to the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, due to Russia's withdrawal from the intermediate-range nuclear forces treaty, one of the key nuclear deterrents established after the Cold War. Let's discuss this matter with Julian Röpcke, military analyst and senior editor of the German publication BILD.
Hello, good to see you again.
I'm happy to see you as well. What type of rockets are these, Julian, and how serious of a threat do they pose for Russia?
No, I think those missiles are not a threat to Russia because, as you have already pointed out, we are talking about the Typhoon system, which is a truck-based system with launchers, which can use defensive means, which means SM-6, Standard Missile 6 air defense missiles with a range of 250 kilometers max. And at the same time, as you already also said, it contains Tomahawk missiles right now, which are with a range of up to 2,500 kilometers. But you may not forget that the Typhoon system is not a ballistic missile system. It's not an intermediate missile system. It's a cruise missile system. And these Tomahawks are normally deployed in warships, which are, for example, sailing in the Baltic Sea, so much closer to Moscow than what we will see in Germany.
In this case, could you clarify for us and for the Russian propaganda, why have these rockets been moved to Germany?
Yes, I think you already pointed this out. I mean, in 2018, Russia admitted, after it couldn't deny this anymore because there were images, that in Kaliningrad exclave, there are different Iskander missiles deployed, including Iskander-M with an alleged range of 500 kilometers, but also Iskander-K with cruise missiles inside, which have a range of more than 2,500 kilometers. And since then, I mean, since 2018, it is obvious to everyone in Europe and also everyone in Moscow that we have a defensive leg. We have a gap there of these weapons. We do not have them. They shouldn't be in Europe, according to the INF, which unfortunately was violated by Russia and then later scrapped by Donald Trump. And right now we are filling this gap, a security gap, which we had so far, which we couldn't have. And it's not, I mean, it's very easy to say Tomahawk is an offensive weapon. Of course, you're right. You can attack with it. But this is about deterrence, of course. It's about deterrence, about saying Moscow, if you're using anything from Kaliningrad or anywhere else in Eastern Europe towards the European continent, towards NATO, towards Germany, we will respond by having the same deadly or even more precise weapons than you have.
I understand that these rockets are not meant as offensive weaponry, but rather defensive, as you and other Western officials have stated. However, following question comes to mind. Why does the West believe that conventional military means are enough to deter Russia? Putin is threatening specifically with a nuclear war and has had the military undergo nuclear training. The West's response seems inconsequential in comparison to what Putin is threatening.
Yes, you're right. I mean, Russia is having this nuclear card again and again, and they're playing this again. You remember first that was the Zaporizhzhia plant, which they were saying could explode at any time. And they painted the same propaganda channel, by the way, which you showed, which said that suddenly the wind is turning towards the West and then Romania and other countries will be nuclearly devastated. Then they had these different drills, which you just recently saw. It was, I think, close to the border with Kazakhstan, while they were saying it was in close to Ukraine. And then just very recently, you had the Belarusian dictator, Alexander Lukashenko, saying that he will deploy Russian nuclear weapons in Belarus, which is very, very close to NATO territory and very close to Berlin, by the way. So I think if you see all this, there is enough reason to deter Russia and to tell them, okay, what you're doing is not okay, and we will respond conventionally, of course, only in the case of conventional threat. I think NATO is clever enough to see that Mr. Putin and his oligarch friends have enough villas and enough people, daughters and sons studying in Europe and the United States, that they will not go for a nuclear first strike against Europe. I think this is out of discussion, and this is only Russian propaganda. Instead, we see that they are, unfortunately, right now, using all kinds of conventional weapons in Ukraine. And I think the idea on NATO side is to keep any sort of attack on NATO territory, would it be Estonia, would it be Poland or any other country, keep it conventional as long as possible, because no one wants a nuclear war.
So if I understand correctly, you don't believe in a scenario where Putin actually presses the big red button and utilizes nuclear weapons?
I think he's deploying nuclear weapons very much. You're absolutely right. He's deploying them everywhere, and he's deploying more also warheads, which can, the Satan and others, which can allegedly go around the whole globe and hit Moscow in the end after they have a 360 circle. So there are different weapons which are being deployed, astronomical weapons with astronomical warheads, which can, as you know, destroy like not only Berlin, but the entire area 50, 100 kilometers around Berlin. But I think we are not playing for this scenario. And honestly, I don't think the Kremlin is planning for this scenario, because this would be in the nuclear end of not only Washington and Berlin, but also Moscow and St. Petersburg and Sochi. And no one wants this. So what I think is the real threat here is that we see another adventure, another Russian hybrid, or more or less hybrid and more or less kinetic attack, like we have seen it in eastern Ukraine, like we have seen it in Georgia, like we have seen it in Moldova or in Belarus. I mean, also Belarus is under Russian attack if you look at it carefully. And I think we want to react to this and give the Kremlin a clear message that whatever it will do, we will respond to it militarily.
Circling back to the missiles placed in Germany, do you personally see a scenario where these weapons would have to be used against Russia? And what is Berlin's view on this? We, of course, remember that Scholz spoke out against escalating the situation, but what would need to happen to cause these rockets to be aimed at, let's say, Moscow?
Well, personally, I hope they will never ever be used against Moscow. Also, I think this is not in discussion. I mean, what we are talking about is military targets. So if there is any sort of escalation, it will be a military target, like a military base.
I mean, sorry to interrupt, that there are military targets that are located within the Moscow Oblast. We have studied these targets, and as I understand these targets, they are located around the whole country.
Yes. Absolutely. So first of all, I think we have to be under no illusion that there is a conflict between Russia and the West. And Russia has been striking us, Berlin, many times. They have been killing political opponents in Berlin, in the center of Berlin, with the FSB and other services included. There's just been a recent arson attack on a German arms manufacturer who has one factory in Berlin, and it is investigated as being a Russian organized arson attack. And we have just heard very recently that there is a CEO of another arms company in Germany, which Russia allegedly plans to kill. So also, if you look at what's happening in Moscow and what's happening in Russian TV, you see that they are under no illusion that there is already a conflict with the West. So I think in this context of Russian politicians like Mr. Peskov just very recently and many others saying that European capitals would be the target in any sort of conflict, we have to be prepared. Which does not never mean that we will have a first strike or we will attack Russia. No one in NATO ever attacked Russia, and no one will ever attack Russia. But we have to understand the context and the reality, and Russia sees itself in war with the West, in war with NATO. They're saying this every day, even long before the war in Ukraine, where they are saying they are fighting NATO. We have seen them in missile drills having these missiles falling on Florida and other areas. So we cannot be under any illusion that Russia sees us as a threat, although we are not. We never attacked any part of Russia, as NATO, I mean, after Second World War. And still, we are seen as a threat. The Kremlin sees itself as an opponent to us, who claimed many times that after Ukraine, there will be more advantages or adventures of saving Russian people in other areas of Europe and so on. So we have to be prepared for this, and we cannot give Russia and the Putin regime any chance of just thinking of striking us without getting a proper response.
Yes, you've raised an important question. Is the West truly afraid of Putin, or do they want the Russian population to be afraid? Thank you very much. I hope to see you again soon on TV Rain. Julian Röpcke, military analyst and senior editor at the German newspaper BILD.